You know his words will get you farther than the film will ever go. Give him a moment of your time, he'll tell you what's wrong with the show. He knows what's good, what's bad, what's really bad. His face is just a sign. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
This is probably going to come as a shock to a lot of you, but I don't like attention. There is a reason I do these reviews almost completely anonymously. I don't even like to think about how many people watch my reviews at this point. So as unsettling as this is, I have discovered a very frightening fact. People in Hollywood are watching my reviews. This is the only explanation I can think of as to how this movie was made. Someone in Hollywood has watched all my reviews, and they said to themselves, let's take everything Confused Matthew hates about movies, the dumb characters, bad dialogue, bad plot twists, bait and switch, unexplained elements that go nowhere, and let's put it all into one coherent screenplay. And as they wrote every line in this script, they said under their breath, oh yeah, this'll piss him off. Well, congratulations. It pissed me the fuck off. This movie is the root command for stupid. Pretty much every decision that went into the conception of this screenplay was the wrong one. I've always said that I hate to say something when others have said it better than I could, so I figure I'd throw an interesting quote out there before we begin. A.O. Scott, whom I consider to be the best professional film critic still in print, summed up my feelings perfectly. If your intention is to make a brooding, hauntingly allegorical terror thriller, then it's probably not a good sign when spectacles of mass death and intimidations of planetary destruction are met with hoots and giggles. No, wait, let me go on. The draggy, lurching 2 hours of knowing will make you long for the end of the world, even as you worry that there will not be time for all your questions to be answered. But hey, what do you know? Roger Ebert was one of the only self-respecting film critics to actually recommend this film, calling it, and I quote, among the best science fiction films I've seen. Really? You'd really put this piece of shit among Close Encounters, Star Wars, Blade Runner, The Time Machine? Dude, what the hell is wrong with you? So no sense beating around the bush, let's just get right to it. The movie begins in Lexington, Massachusetts in 1959. A creepy little girl named Lucinda has had a winning idea as to how to celebrate the official opening of a new elementary school. All the kids will draw something and stick it in a time capsule for future schoolgoers to find. So all the kids draw a picture, except for the creepy little girl. She instead writes a long series of numbers, but gets cut off before she can finish it. The ceremony goes on, but Lucinda eventually turns up missing. She is discovered a bit later scratching something into a wooden door with her fingernails. So then, as the little subtitle says, the film jumps to present day, which is a tactic screenwriters often use to prevent a movie from becoming dated. Wait, what does it say on the banner over there later in the film? Whoops. Anyway, so now we center on a boy and his dad barbecuing in the backyard and discussing the heavens. Here we have the start of an incredibly broken and poorly written screenplay. Check this out.
Saturn's rings await your approval.
Has anyone found life on other planets?
Not yet. Guess it's just us for now.
Okay, then how many that might have life?
Well, if you count the number of stars similar to our sun in this galaxy, then you factor in the probability that they have Earth-like planets orbiting them.
There are 10 million possible worlds with 4 million mature enough for life to evolve.
After this, the dad comes up to wish the kid goodnight.
Caleb, when I said it was just us out there, you know I was talking about space, right? I didn't mean heaven or anything.
What? Where the fuck did that come from? Hang on, let's back this movie up for a second.
Saturn's rings await your approval.
Has anyone found life on other planets?
If you count the number of stars similar to our sun in this galaxy, then you factor in the probability that they have Earth-like planets orbiting them.
Considering you guys were talking about Saturn, life on other planets, and the Drake equation, yeah, I assumed you were talking about outer space. And so did the kid. Why is he making sure his son didn't think he was talking about heaven? Oh yeah, because surprise, you're being preached at. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. If you wanted to make this scene actually work, you should have had the kid act bothered by his father's insistence that life elsewhere was unlikely, and make the dialogue vague so that the kid may have actually thought he was talking about heaven. You're not writing this well.
I'm sure wherever Mom is.
Dad, you don't even believe in heaven.
I never said that, Caleb. I just said we can't know for sure, that's all. If you want to believe, you go ahead and believe. Okay? Okay, bedtime.
Here's the thing. I found Blade Runner to be one of the most boring movies I have ever seen, but it is also one of the best movies I've ever seen because the message it conveys and the subjects it deals with were delivered in a way that were both elegant and subtle in the film. This is a sledgehammer to the fucking face, so much so that they had to make the main characters forget about their previous dialogue just so they could bring this shit up and talk about it. If it's done well, then I don't mind it when a filmmaker puts a message or theme in the film, no matter what that message is. But not when they have to sneak it under the guise of a disaster movie. It's like when the Congress sneaks in a bill to cut school lunches under the 51st page of a sanitation bill. It's not even 10 minutes in, and this movie is already pissing me off. Don't preach to me when you told me this was gonna be a disaster film. So anyway, the next day the dad goes off to his job as a professor of astrophysics.
We're going to pose a topic to get you thinking along the right lines for your term paper. It's a subject of randomness versus determinism in the universe. Who's jumping in? Jessica.
Determinism says that occurrences in nature are causally decided by preceding events or natural laws, that everything leading up to this point has happened for a reason.
That's right. That's what determinism says. Now, I want you to think about the perfect set of circumstances that put this celestial ball of fire at just the correct distance from our little blue planet for life to evolve, making it possible for you to be sitting here in this riveting lecture. But that's a nice thought, right? Everything has a purpose, an order to it, is determined.
Well, no. You're right about everything except for the last part. Determinism states that every event in the universe, including your life and mine, has a deterministic cause. It doesn't say anything about purpose at all.
But then there's the other side of the argument. The theory of randomness, which says it's all simply coincidence. The very fact we exist is nothing but the result of a complex, yet inevitable string of chemical accidents and biological mutations. There is no grand meaning. There's no purpose.
Well, no. Determinism states that there is no purpose just as ferociously as your theory of randomness. Determinism states that every action has a cause, not that every action has a purpose. Sure, the sun being a certain distance away in order for life to evolve on Earth may have been one of the causal factors of life on Earth, but nowhere in determinism does it state that the sun fosters life on Earth on purpose. The only place you find purpose infused with determinism is when you start getting into the article of faith known as intelligent design. So how did a lecture on astrophysics devolve into this? Oh yeah, because surprise, you're being preached at.
What about you, Professor Kessler?
What?
Well, what do you believe?
I think shit just happens.
And that is precisely why I remain a professor of astrophysics, because shit just happens. It couldn't possibly be that I'm being force-fed this view, even though it's ridiculously incompatible with my chosen profession, just so I can have a revelation at the end of the film that restores my faith. Fuck you. So anywho, after the class, the dad arrives at the 50th anniversary celebration of his son's elementary school. The time capsule is brought out, and Cage's son receives the numbers written by the creepy little girl in the opening. He ponders it for a while, and then realizes he's being watched by some creepy dude in the woods.
Hey, what'd you get? Boring. Everyone else got a picture.
Hey, when did Simba get into this movie? Random little brat. Anyway, the kid takes the paper home, much to the dislike of his father, who demands he return it in the morning. So here's what happens. The dad accidentally sets his drink down on the paper, creating a ring around a set of numbers. And based on this random and minuscule event alone, it occurs to him to start adding them up and sorting them into dates. He realizes that the numbers are actually a list of specific dates and numbers of victims of various disasters that have taken place in the last 50 years, with 3 that have yet to take place. Now, you're all probably going to assume that the contrivance of Cage just happening to set his drink down, leading him to understanding a code, is the biggest thing that bothers me about this retard plot. But it's actually the second biggest. My biggest problem is this. The list that Cage conveniently decodes is absolutely nothing like the supposed Bible code or anything that came from Nostradamus. In those instances, we get a few vague words here and there per page, or names, numbers, and locations that you have to manipulate the data to make come out right. This is nothing like that hokum. The list that Lucinda made is not a code at all. It is a list of specific dates and victim numbers that don't need to be interpreted or rearranged. Every single one is accurate down to the number and can be checked and double-checked by anyone with access to the paper. And yet, despite this scientific precision, not one single professional person believes him. I don't want to delve too much into a serious controversial territory here, but it seems to me that the people who wrote this movie are pretty damn cynical towards the scientific community. Scientists are skeptics by nature, but skeptic does not mean I don't believe anything. It means show me the evidence and I'll believe it. Cage has irrefutable proof that his list is accurate, and he is still shunned by his peers for no other reason but that the movie needs him to be the lone wolf.
Yeah. All right, stay with me. I know how this sounds. But I've matched these numbers to the dates of every major global disaster for the last 50 years in perfect sequence, except for 3. And these events haven't occurred yet, starting with this one. So tomorrow, somewhere on the planet, this number string predicts that 81 people are gonna die in some kind of tragedy.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, have a listen to yourself.
I know.
It sounds pretty crazy, right?
I know.
I mean, even for you.
What do you mean, even for you? You guys all watched this movie, I assume. Did you ever get the impression that this guy is in the habit of saying or doing crazy things? Oh, that might get a laugh. I guess I'll dump it in the screenplay. Fuck you! Welcome to part 2. So last we saw, Cage's character was trying to convince his friend that a list that is in perfect sequence of disasters over the last 50 years is a list that is in perfect sequence of disasters over the last 50 years. His friend's first objection is that maybe someone made the list as a practical joke, which Cage dismisses on the grounds that he saw them take it out of the time capsule with his own eyes. So the friend believes him now, right?
Numerology, Kabbalah, Pythagorean cults, they're systems that find meaning in numbers. And they are a dime a dozen. Why? Because people see what they want to see in them.
Were you even listening to him?
I was up all night going over this. I went through that list again and again, and I tried to fault it, and I couldn't.
He's not just seeing what he wants to see. He double-checked the list, tried to fault it, and he couldn't. As a scientist and a skeptic, double-checking the list is what you should be doing. But you're not. All you're doing is finding reasons not to accept the list and going... The only reasonable objection he raises comes right here.
Okay, let me ask you this then. All these uncircled numbers, what do they mean?
I don't know yet. Maybe nothing, but
Maybe they all mean nothing.
Two things. First, even if there are uncircled numbers with no sequence, the fact that the numbers that are circled are so damn accurate should lead us to posit that the numbers that aren't circled do have a sequence, we just haven't found out what it is yet. And the reason I say that is because of how spot on and trustworthy they are. If you could move the circle over one and still get the sequence as correct as this, the list would be debunked. But there is no denying its accuracy whether all the numbers are circled or not. If that list had had only 5 or even 10 accurate sequences of events on it, our skeptic friend would be totally justified in dismissing it. But look at that! There's like 100 billion on there and they all come out right. But the second thing is this. Cage eventually does figure out what the uncircled numbers are, and guess what they turn out to be? Motherfucking coordinates! And still no one will believe him. I think. Let's just move on for now. So Cage decides to pay a visit to the former school teacher who was there the day the list was written. This scene between Cage and the old lady sucks. I mean, it sucks hard. For all of this movie's stupidity, I actually found this to be the worst scene in it. The dialogue falls apart by nearly word 1, and it's completely pointless as the old lady will not end up telling him anything that either he didn't already know or couldn't have figured out by trying to visit Lucinda instead of this woman. I've always said that certain movies or parts of movies can be used to teach future writers what not to do. Well, I'm actually going to do that right now. So welcome to Confused Matthew's Screenwriting Lesson 101. Keep the fuck track of what you make your characters say. If you don't, many parts of your movie may end up being this broken and stupid. Cage begins asking questions about the list, Lucinda, and the day she wrote it. The old lady immediately recalls the day they couldn't find her.
Why was she hiding?
I'm not sure. She was holding up the class, writing all those silly numbers. I had to hurry her along. Then we found her, and I knew something had frightened the poor dear. But we never could get her to tell us what it was.
Make them stop. Please, make them stop whispering.
Sounds like she told you it was people whispering. You can't write! But the worst part of all comes right here. Let's back up a tiny bit and focus on something the old lady said for no reason in the dialogue.
She was holding up the class, writing all those silly numbers. I had to hurry her along.
Now here's what she says less than 20 seconds later.
Miss Taylor, my son got Lucinda's time capsule message. Do you remember this? Is this what she wrote?
Oh, Professor, you are testing an old woman's memory.
You just said you remember her writing specifically numbers. What other paper with numbers on it did you think he was handing you? Keep the fuck track of what you make your characters say. So Cage learns that Lucinda died a few years ago. He starts trying to track down a few other people that were there at the ceremony when a car full of creepy dudes pulls up beside his son and hands him something.
Taylor! Who was that?
I don't know, just some guys.
What'd he give you?
Just this. Kinda cool, isn't it?
I wonder what that is and what it means. Well, it seems to be a pretty important part of the story, so I'm sure we'll be told. Anyway, so he looks up Lucinda on the internet when he gets a visit from his sister, and we get a long scene of exposition here to the effect that Cage hasn't spoken to his father in a long time, and that the majority of his family is religious except for him. This is really where the fundamentals of the plot end up falling flat for me. Pretty much everything that Signs did right, this movie is doing wrong. If you remember in Signs, our main character lost his wife, which caused him to lose faith and to leave the church entirely. Well, in this movie, Cage has also lost his wife, a fact that has come up a number of times in the film. In fact, his wife was one of the victims in one of the disasters on Lucinda's list. But so what? What did his wife's passing do to change anything? I suppose it caused him to adopt the philosophy that shit just happens, but that philosophy didn't change any other facet of his life. He still teaches astrophysics, still doesn't speak to his father. His wife is dead, but our protagonist is exactly the same for the experience, except that he now has an excuse to have a revelation at the end of the film, and that's all the dead wife angle is good for. I know I keep comparing this movie to Signs, but I can really do nothing else. Knowing is exactly what Signs would have been had it sucked. So anywho, Cage goes for a drive when he discovers that not only are the uncircled numbers on the list coordinates, but that the next disaster is going to strike conveniently where he is. This disaster comes in the form of a plane crash. Now, under different circumstances, I might be complaining that this many people shouldn't be running around without a scratch and not on fire, but there is a time and a place for everything, and this is most definitely the time for Confused Matthew to just shut up and enjoy the movie. This is the first time that the film made me enjoy myself, but it's too little, too late, as the first hint of it being a disaster movie is 40 minutes in. And to add insult to injury, this is only one of 2 disasters we will see in this movie, with the rest of it comprised of a bad, low-end Bible study group. Disaster movie? My ass. So now when Cage goes home, he has a conversation with his pseudo-skeptic buddy, but I'm going to leave that conversation for part 3. What I want to get to now is what happens with the kid. He tries to sleep upstairs when one of the creepy dudes comes into his room. He shows the kid a vision of anything and everything being on fire before his dad comes running up to find out what's going on. Now, when the dad comes up, the creepy guy is nowhere to be found, so he is apparently left. But check this out. What would have had to have happened in order for this to make sense is that the creepy dude would have had to have heard the dad coming up, left the house, walked a shit ton away from the house, stopped, turned around, and just stood there waiting for the dad to see him so he could go away again. Fuck you. And to make things worse is what we see next. Bad material alone is enough to kill a movie, but this is one of those times where bad material is brought down even more by a piss-awful performance.
Hey! Hey! You stay away from us, you hear? Want some of this?
Yeah, you want some of this? You want some of what that tree got? We're all really buying this, guys. We're all really buying that awful performance and this awful dialogue. Welcome to part 3. So as I said, a conversation takes place between Cage and his pseudo-skeptic buddy. This particular scene strikes me as the writers being put between a rock and a hard place by their own hand. The list is now obviously legitimate, but they still have to keep the friend on the outside. So the dialogue is made necessarily vague, and the friend, while I think he may believe Cage now, still reacts necessarily stupid.
Date, the number of dead, the GPS coordinates. Latin long. Why didn't I see that?
Maybe because you weren't even entertaining the thought that the list might be legitimate.
So what are we calling this? Synchronicity? 2 unrelated events, digging up a time capsule, plane crash combined to create a significance for the subject?
No! You absolute imbecile! This is not synchronicity! Synchronicity is like how Back to the Future 2 said that Florida would have a Major League Baseball team by 2015, and then in the future the writers learned that there actually does happen to be a Florida team in the future. How can you not understand the difference between synchronicity and a list?
We don't have a frame of reference. There could be multiple meanings to consider.
No! You absolute imbecile! There are not multiple meanings to consider. There is only one meaning. If the list says 81 people are gonna die tomorrow, then 81 people are gonna die tomorrow. Okay, I'm still in the dark as to whether you even believe the list now or not, but one thing has to be for sure. You guys are gonna go public with the list now, right?
Right now, my scientific mind is telling me to have nothing more to do with this.
Of course. Of course it is. So then Cage's character tracks down the daughter of Lucinda, who I guess is a character now, and follows her to a museum. He uses the awkward and pointless strategy of pretending he just bumped into her, but later just lays all his cards out on the table and asks about her mom. Now, it's a small detail, but in asking her questions, he does something that is both ridiculous and very odd.
Who are you?
Yeah, it's awkward. You don't know me. I'm John Kessler. I teach astrophysics at MIT. My son goes to William Dawes Elementary, which is the same school your mother went to.
I'm not even sure that this counts as a criticism about the movie, but dude, unless you're a cop or working for the government in some capacity, you don't need to flash an ID at this woman. What did you think, that if you didn't show her your identification, she might not believe you're here in your official capacity as a guy who works at a university? You may as well have just flashed her your Six Flags Fun Pass. The woman recoils from Cage and his questions about her mother's ability, so Cage moves on and tries to deal with the next disaster. This time he tries to avert the disaster as he has foreknowledge of when and where it will be, which is what the whole movie should have been about. He calls up the FBI in New York and tells them that there will be an attack the next day at the coordinates he has, and tells him to clear the area. Later he drops his son off at his sister's house, and once again displays a performance that is so bad, it's even starting to bother me.
You said you'd take him off my hands.
I'm acting in this movie. Cage goes to make sure that his threat was taken seriously, but for some reason it wasn't. Instead, it seems like the cops were just waiting around for some suspicious guy to show up. They eventually chase Cage down into the subway, and it turns out that the disaster is going to happen here. Now, I'm not going to say that the subway scene wasn't awesome, because it was. It had me reacting the way a good disaster movie should. I laughed and cringed at all the mindless destruction left in its wake, and had myself a really good time. But as I said earlier, this is the last of 2 short disaster scenes this movie has to offer in the 2 hours that it runs. So after the disaster, he tries to give the dialogue with Lucinda's daughter another go, this time with more success. They drive to Lucinda's old house, and also realize that the last 2 numbers on the list aren't actually numbers. They're the letters EE written backwards. They search through Lucinda's old house when they stumble upon a small pile of these rock things. This causes Cage to look under the bed. He ends up lifting the whole thing up, and it turns out that Lucinda carved the words "everyone else" on the underside of the bed. Now, I don't know if she actually got under the bed to do this, or if she simply physically lifted the bed up, carved this all in, and put it down again, but it just makes you wonder why she didn't scratch this into a nearby wall, or maybe just wrote it down on a piece of paper. Oh yeah, because putting this on the underside of the bed, even though it makes no sense, makes it a big reveal in the movie we're watching. Fuck you. So as they search the house, the kids outside are accosted by the big albino insurance salesman. "We have premium rates." Anywho, it is eventually revealed that everyone else was an indication that a big solar flare will occur, wiping out all life on Earth. Which raises a number of baffling questions. What the hell is the point of making a list of all the disasters in the next 50 years if the last disaster on your list is the only one that matters? There's no cause and effect between terrestrial disasters and a huge solar flare, so why do we even need to know about them? Why not just write everyone else and kiss your ass goodbye? Also, was Lucinda crazy on her own, or was it due to the insurance salesman whispering at her? The reason I ask is because the other two kids in this movie hear them, and they're perfectly sane. And you also start to wonder why she didn't just write down the everyone else part in more detail later. Just because she was interrupted in writing it in the original list doesn't mean she can't make another one later on and tell somebody about it. The point is, there just is no joy in trying to answer these questions because they aren't organic to the story. The reason these questions are in there is because everything that happens in the movie is at the absolute convenience of keeping the movie going. The answer to all of them is just shitty writing. Anyway, so upon learning that the world is coming to an end, Cage decides to finally call his dad and tell him about the world's impending doom.
This heat we're experiencing isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse. Much worse. I need you to get Mom and Grace and any supplies you can and get below ground tonight. The basement, the sewer, the T. Just get as deep as you can and as fast as you can.
Wow. You must really have a grudge against your dad if you're telling him to spend his last moments on Earth in the sewer. Anyway, the plan that our four main characters have for survival is to hide out in some nearby caves. Cage goes up to get his son and finds him doing something odd.
Caleb! Caleb, stop! Caleb!
Quick question here. What the hell was this kid writing? It couldn't be disasters of the past, because what would be the point? And after all, Lucinda only wrote the disasters that preceded her, and it can't be disasters of the future of their world, because their world has no future. Oh, right, I'm sorry, I forgot. This movie sucks. Of course, Cage's son's stupid actions that make no sense just so happen to make it occur to Cage to find the door Lucinda scratched at. Of course. Of course it does. While Cage believes that what's on the door will be coordinates to somewhere safe, Lucinda's daughter simply follows her role as the panicking and overacting character who just won't listen to reason. You know how in a bad movie someone will say something ridiculous and cliche like, "We have to get to the caves"? Well, check this out.
John, please, what are you doing? We have to get to the caves.
Unbelievable. Cage eventually deciphers the coordinates on the door, but in a stupid, plot-necessary panic, Lucinda's daughter drives off with the kids. Way to go, plot convenience, and feel free to overact all you want here on the trip.
I want to call my dad.
The phone's down. I promise he's right behind us. We'll call him when we get there.
Oh, dear God. They get to a gas station, and Cage's son calls him up. Eventually, Lucinda's daughter grabs the phone, and Cage tries to reason with her. Now, remember to overact as much as possible, guys.
I found the numbers. They're the location of your mother's mobile home. That's where we've got to go.
Don't do this to me. Please.
I know how it sounds.
You want us to head toward the place where this is supposed to happen? Are you insane?
It's a chance we gotta take or we're all gonna die. Stay where you are. I'll be right there.
No, if we go to the caves, we have a chance. You said the sun can't reach that far.
The caves won't save us. Nothing can. The radiation will penetrate a mile to the Earth's crust. Do you hear me?
Then why did you tell your family to get into the sewer? So it comes down to this. They can either die in the caves where they know they'll die, or they can take a chance and follow the coordinates to something that might save them. Yeah, I know, plot convenience. It all sounds so sound and reasonable, but you see, we need the movie to keep going, so we just can't let you make sense. Don't think about what this guy's saying, just flip out and tell him that you don't believe him, spouting something about how you have to save the children, and don't forget to overact as much as possible.
Our only shot is to go where the numbers want us to go. It's what we're meant to do.
I don't believe you. I'm taking the children. We have to save the children.
So as the doofus that was stuck in here to make the plot work yells at Cage's character in an unconvincing way, the insurance salesmen drive off with the kids. Lucinda's daughter drives after them, but is killed in a car crash. Good. Cage arrives at the coordinates, which happens to be at Lucinda's old house, and we get one of the most ridiculous endings you will ever witness in your life. That's right. It turns out that the insurance salesmen are actually retard aliens. Or angels. Or who cares? There's something so otherworldly that it's completely out of step with everything else in the film and can only be seen as ridiculous to everyone who's been following it up to this point.
They've been protecting us all along, Dad. They sent a message ahead of them to prepare the way.
Oh, so they gave you and a bunch of other people random and meaningless information to prepare the way instead of just giving you the date and coordinates, huh? Okay, great. So where's everyone else? Are they already in the ship? Oh, so they all got here before you, huh? When? Like yesterday? When you guys were here but didn't see anyone going to the ship? And why did you guys get chauffeured here? Did you pay extra for the insurance salesman driver service?
This is my friend. I said I can keep him. What do you mean? I don't understand. Why is he saying that, Dad?
What? What's he saying, Ken?
He's saying only the chosen must go.
You won't let him take his dad, but you'll let him take a goddamn rabbit? Not only that, but so only the chosen must go, and the chosen are the ones that heard the whispering. So it doesn't even matter what was whispered? It doesn't even matter who believes the list? They just have to hear it from you guys? Then what was the point of giving them this information in the first place if it has nothing to do with who is chosen? Are you picking the chosen ones by giving them those rock things you never explained? If so, then why did Lucinda have more of them than everyone else? Was she extra special chosen? Why did Lucinda's daughter get one? She didn't hear any retard voices. You see, the problem with the list, the retard voices, the insurance salesman, and the rock things is that they're just dumping these questions out there for us to ponder, and sometimes that works. But not when they've put so little thought into what they're dumping that it doesn't make sense any way you choose to think about it. So the retard angel aliens take the kids and a few rabbits away to safety, but leave their father there to die. Right, stop that. It's silly. Very silly indeed. It started out as a nice little idea about a small girl's paper predicting future events, but now it's just got silly. So Cage, having nothing to do now but die, drives to his parents' house to have a revelation that restores his faith, and hoping that they haven't gotten into the sewer yet. Cage is dead, but the bunnies will live on. Oh, I get it. It's the rapture. Get it, everyone? It's the rapture. A handful of people got taken away and everyone else was left behind in chaos. Get it? Yeah. Rapture. No one cares! No one came here for a Bible lesson! Don't preach to me when you told me this was gonna be a disaster film! A quick word about the preaching. This is not the first time that biblical references have been worked into a story. Another obvious example is the Chronicles of Narnia. But Narnia was a fantasy adventure story first, and reworkings of Bible tales second. Sure, Aslan gets resurrected much like Jesus, but the story was not about the resurrection story, nor was it just stringing us along for us to get to that resurrection story. Anyone reading the Chronicles of Narnia expecting a fantasy adventure story will get their money's worth. But this movie is nothing more than bait and switch. It tells us that we're all going to sit down and watch a disaster film, and only after bearing with all the nonsense do we finally realize it was just the way to show us the rapture. What a bunch of crap. So Cage dies with his family and makes peace about all the shit just happened stuff that never really affected him in the first place. So the movie is over. Oh wait, there's more? Oh god, don't show the kids on the planet. Don't show the kids on the planet. Please don't show the kids on another planet. Oh, what the hell were you thinking? How the hell did this stupid thing get into outer space? It's the Dude, Where's My Car ending. It literally is. We start out with something simple and mundane, and we end up in a ludicrous and ridiculously over-the-top outcome. Except that actually worked in Dude, Where's My Car precisely because it was so laughable. What moron told you that anyone could ever take this seriously? That's about all I had to say about the film. I'm going to go watch Signs and Narnia a few dozen times to wash this god-awful taste out of my mouth now. Long live the bunnies. The end.